Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Dev Diary. And today, folks, an attempt to get weird with Tetris ended up being quite the journey. So before we embark on that journey, remember to leave a like if you enjoy the video and subscribe if you're new to the channel. And also remember to turn on notifications so you don't miss future videos. So the original plan for today was to create a version of Tetris that was physics-based mixed with a bit of action for good measure. But what sounded good on paper was a nightmare to try to make a reality. Now, things were revised in an attempt to salvage the concept, which actually made the whole thing way worse. So here we are at attempt number 3, this time going with something similar but also completely different. In other words, today's project is simple but not due to a lack of effort. Now, the concept is pretty straightforward, and assuming things don't go awry, could possibly even be cozy. Now, this is a game that challenges the player to store as many shapes in the given space in 1 minute. The twist being it's physics-based, and the physics are purposely a little floaty. Now, the player is able to move around the room freely in any direction, and has the ability to fire a pellet with left click. And when coming in contact with a shape, this pellet will provide a bit of force to move the shape before popping out of existence. Otherwise, the player must simply jam their face into a shape to push it into the square in the middle of the room. The size of the square as well as the spawning of the shapes are all randomized. And a bunch of extra checks are needed to make sure that not only did shapes not spawn in the square, but also that they would not spawn on top of one another, as this would sometimes end up inadvertently fusing objects together. And together, assuming that you enjoy these videos, can help me continue making them possible by supporting me on Patreon. You can get early access to some exclusive content and downloads, and even early access to the weekly Dev Diary videos before they're released on YouTube. Now, a general timer counts down to the minute the player has to do their thing, which is displayed at the top left along with how many shapes are counted as being in the square. Shapes that are within the square are kept track of via a list. This list is then used to display the count on the HUD, but also to display confirmation check marks when the player is near the center square. And once the timer reaches 0, the game over state kicks in. This state halts all the gameplay and displays the final number of how many shapes were stored in the space. The player can then reset to try again with a new space, thus making the loop as simple as trying to shove as many shapes into the space before time runs out. Now, I should note that while this seems like a very basic project, a lot was learned here. Like, despite having many ideas that could use physics, my knowledge is still pretty limited, and long story short, a lot of technical knowledge was gained out of the pure desperation to, make sure that this wasn't another failure. Though a lot of remnants from both previous attempts still live on in this iteration, like the Tetris shapes, the player's ability to fire pellets, the space for shapes to exist, all parts of the original 2 versions that were scrapped. And honestly, thankfully, this revision actually has some merit, and so expect this one to return under more interesting circumstances in the future. But for now, that's where this project ends, and so let's not focus on failure today. Instead, what was the last thing that you succeeded at doing in your own life or your own endeavors? Again, doesn't even have to be game dev related. Be sure to leave your thoughts and stories in the comments. Anyway, with that said, brings us to the end of today's Dev Diary, so thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.